Welcome to the next exciting installment in Chapter 11 when we're dealing with the locus and the parabola. Although today we're not actually going to be focusing on the parabola, we're dealing with the locus and the circle. A little bit of circle revision. But before we actually continue, we need to remind ourselves of what the word locus, or locus if you prefer, what does it mean? Well, remember, it's a single point, and the path that that point traces out is called the locus. In that path we can find the equation of it. We do have a special case, and that's what we're dealing on today, and that's when our point is always a constant distance away from another fixed point, we always end up with a circle, and that constant distance that it's away is the radius, and that fixed point is the center of our circle. Now we need to be reminded of our formulas from year 10, and here's our first formula. X squared plus y squared equals r squared, and that's when the center of the circle is at 0, 0 and the radius is r. That's the simplest type of formula we can come across. But when the center is moved, we end up with our slightly more complicated formula, x take h squared plus y take k squared equals r squared, where the center's at plus h minus k, at plus h and minus k. So let's see what happens when we actually apply some of this knowledge. Here's example number 1. So for the first example, we've got the equation of a locus of a point that's always 4 units from the point minus 3, 0. That's what we have to find. Well, we're dealing with a point that's always 4 units from minus 3, 0. So it's a circle. And the radius will be 4. And the center of the circle will be minus 3, 0. So let's actually consider that. We know that it's not a simple circle that's at 0, 0, so we've got our formula. X take h squared plus y take k squared equals r squared. But what's h and k and what's r? Well, we know that the radius is 4 and h and k we know come from the center of the circle. We plug those values in. Remember, it's x minus h, which will become x minus 3, so you get x plus 3 in bracket squared plus y take 0 in bracket squared equals 4 squared. Now we multiply the brackets out, x plus 3 in brackets squared. Now when we deal with questions like this, remember, square the first term, multiply the two terms together, and then square the last term when you're trying to shortcut a bracket out. So let's deal with that. If we square the first term, we get x squared. If we multiply the two terms together, we get 3x, double that, gives 6x. And if we square the last term, 3 times 3 gives 9. So we end up with x squared plus 6x plus 9. Then we look at the next part. And y in brackets, y take 0 in brackets squared just becomes y squared. Let's just pull that back a bit. Yes, good. And 4 squared is 16. So there's where we generate our expansion. Let's minus 16 to both sides. Excuse me. When we minus 16 to both sides, 9 takes 16 gives minus 7. We end up with x squared plus 6x plus y squared take 7 equals 0. Remember, we like to give our answer with an equals 0. If we just wanted to see what that would look like, it's a circle with a center at negative 3, 0 and a radius of 4. Let's try our second example. We need to find the radius and the center of the circle x squared plus 4x plus y squared take 8y take 5 equals 0. Now this formula, or this circle, is written in a form that we can't quickly find the center and the radius without doing a little bit of tricky stuff. So there's our circle, and we're going to complete the square on the x parts and complete the square on the y parts. So, excuse me, we're going to add a box and take a box for the x parts and add a box and take a box for the y parts. Now remember, when you're dealing with questions like this, when you're completing the square, we look for the x boxes, we're going to be looking and we're going to be taking half of the number in front of x. Half of 4 is 2, and then we square it. 2 squared gives 4. In the second set of boxes, we're taking half the number in front of y. Half of minus 8 is minus 4. Minus 4 squared is 16. So when we deal with this question, we should end up with x squared plus 4x plus 4 and minus 4 in the box, and in the second boxes I get a plus 16 and minus 16. Now I've gone to the trouble of just putting those little orange borders around the important x parts and the important y parts. Let's factorize that first orange box. The first orange box, when I factorize it, numbers at times to give 4 and add to give 4 are 2 and 2, and remember the answer will always be half of that number there. So we end up with x plus, I actually haven't factorized that there yet, we will in a moment. I decide what I do first is tidy up these number parts. So I've actually looked at these bits, I'd say, and looked at the minus 4, the minus 16 and the minus 5. So what do we end up when we play around with this? The first two orange boxes don't change, and the other numbers, minus 4 minus 16 gives minus 20, take away 5, minus 25. So I'm just tidying up the order there. Now that minus 25 that I generate, minus 25, when I add it to both sides, will generate my plus 25. Now let's focus on these brackets that I was looking at. The first bracket, half of plus 4 is plus 2, so it'll become x plus 2 in brackets squared. Half of minus 8 is minus 4, so it'll become y take 4 in brackets all squared. So we'll end up with x plus 2 in brackets squared plus y take 4 in brackets squared equals 25. We can read the centre and the radius off from that. If we look at that question there, we can see that the centre is minus 2 plus 4, and the radius is the square root of 25, which is 5. So that's how we deal with those types of circle questions. Now it's time for you to do some work.